Everyone believes I'm innocent, but I've been secretly sneaking out to meet my ex in a remote mountain cabin, which sounds like the kind of confession you'd whisper into a coat collar at a bus stop so the wind can carry it somewhere less incriminating. I'm Sarah, I'm 29, and I'm an urban planner, the sort who spends her days turning messy neighborhoods into maps with little legends that say soothing things like mixed-use potential and traffic calming, while my own life is a roundabout with no signage and a few too many tire marks. At work, I draft future tense sentences for a living. Pedestrian permeability, active frontage, human-scale streets. I do diagrams of a city that might behave if we ask nicely. On Monday mornings, my inbox is politely on fire. Residents who want trees that don't drop leaves, shopkeepers who want cars and foot traffic but not in the same hour, a mayor who wants ribbon-cutting photos where my hair doesn't look like I argued with the wind. I am good at this. I am good at hearing a complaint and excavating the story underneath it. I can stand in a room full of men who say parking minimums like it's scripture and make a case for benches and shade. And then I go home, wash the ink off my fingers, and tell my partner I have an early site visit while I am actually packing socks for a cabin that smells like rain and varnish and the kind of quiet that asks you to introduce yourself. My partner is named Eli. He teaches chemistry to teenagers and wears the resigned expression of a man who has explained covalent bonds 9,000 times. He makes the best lentils. He knows when to pass me the forked lightning of a joke and when to just hand me the cushion. He loves our apartment like a person loves a friendly dog. He is decent in a way that would embarrass saints. He thinks I am nice. I am not nice, I am careful. There's a difference that sounds like semantics until you find yourself standing in a mountain kitchen at midnight undoing your own definition. The ex is Rowan. Yes, like the tree, I know. We met when I was 22 and believed in unreasonably spicy food and unearned declarations. He was a carpenter then, the kind who could make a bookshelf breathe. We had 3 years that felt like a song the radio plays at exactly the right second. Bikes with rattling baskets, unoaked red wine that lied about its price, a bed that counted as a hobby. We also had the kind of arguments people have when they're trying to use love as a translator for ambition. He wanted literal woods. I wanted walkable neighborhoods with light rail. We broke with a handshake and a door that was closed very softly, which is probably why it stayed open in my head. The cabin is 2 hours north on a road that changes its mind about what it wants to be. It belongs to Rowan's friend, a tree surgeon who believes houses should earn their keep by sheltering people who say please to the kettle. When you pull off the highway, the asphalt exhales into gravel, and the trees start introducing themselves, stringy barks and gums, the kind of green that refuses to be just one color. At the turnoff, there's a letterbox shaped like a kookaburra with a missing beak. I touch its head every time like a ridiculous superstition. The cabin sits on a small ledge above a creek that sounds like it's arguing with a stone about something petty. The deck has an old camp chair that might have opinions if you gave it a pen. When it's cold, the windows sweat. The way back into each other started with a city council consultation on a Thursday when the room was full of fluorescent lights and unending grievances about bicycles. Rowan arrived to install a temporary exhibition wall because the town hall's old panels were warped by realism. He walked in carrying a plank and the kind of weather-beaten patience that belongs to people who have learned how to apologize to cedar. We said hello like people who have shared a toothbrush and a rented heater. He asked how the city was treating me. I said I was teaching it to sit. He grinned, which used to be illegal. We moved chairs together and pretended it was a task. He texted the next day, a photo of a plank with a knot that looked like an eye captioned, "This one disagrees with me." I wrote back something about NIMBYs, which is a professional joke and a personal tell. He said he had a place he goes when the world is too straight. He said the creek has a habit of rearranging sentences until you remember which ones deserve to be finished. I asked why he was telling me. He said, "Because once you taught me how to love grids without making me apologize to the curve." I said that was a good sentence and would he please stop being good at sentences. The first time I drove up again, I told Eli I was meeting a landscape architect out of town to look at a creek daylighting site. This is the sort of lie that offends me professionally, it's too on brand. I packed the measuring tape I used to reassure myself I'm a scientist and the sweater that looks like I have feelings. The cabin greeted me like it was pretending not to. Rowan made coffee on a stove that believes patience is a spice. We stood on the deck and watched the mess of the creek. It speaks in every tense. We didn't touch that first day. We took our old competence out and tried it on. He showed me a chair he's been coaxing out of a stubborn log. I showed him the new app the city wants everyone to use for reporting potholes, as though potholes respect software. We were painfully adult. We were boring on purpose. The silence between us felt like a room learning how to host again. Back in the apartment, Eli asked about the site visit. I told him about rocks and culverts and the elderly man who told me I couldn't possibly understand the creek because I wasn't wearing gumboots. Eli laughed, kissed my forehead, and made tea with the lemon as though it were holy. I stared at the steam and let my conscience fog with the window. I'm not saying I didn't know what I was doing. I'm saying I pretended planning had nothing to do with arriving. It got easier to go. That's the worst and truest sentence. I found reasons like a raccoon finds shiny things, a field inspection, a stakeholder breakfast, early starts that required early nights elsewhere. I became incredible at folding a weekend's worth of hunger into a day pack. I learned the exact stretch of road where the radio loses faith. I threw my phone in the glove box like a poor man's ritual, because the tone I used with Rowan offended the tone I used with Eli, and I couldn't listen to both at once. At the cabin, the world softened its corners. We read without performing being readers. We walked until our legs agreed to be machines. At dusk, the ridgeline did that trick where the trees look like they've been cut out of black paper. He cooked things that tasted like verbs. We said no big words, no future, no always, no instead. It was, I told myself, an intermission. I told myself that intermissions are allowed, necessary even for the show to make sense. I didn't say out loud that intermissions end. The thing about Eli is he does kindness like a hobby and respect like rent. He once drove to my office at 2 a.m. because my model wouldn't render and sat in the lobby reading a book about mushrooms until I came down, furious and small. He passed me almonds and told me my brain was a good neighbor, then didn't try to fix a single thing. How do you betray a person who has made your dignity a domestic habit? Quietly, apparently. You do it by calling your moral fatigue a phase with a straight face. You do it by being very good at washing dishes as if competence were absolution. Sal, my best friend since we were both bus stop philosophers at 15, saw it inside a week. She has a nose that makes bloodhounds feel underemployed. We were at a ribbon cutting for a pocket park where we'd installed swings that don't squeak. You're glowing, she said. I said, iron supplements, which is the kind of bad lie that protects no one. She tilted her head. You smell like wet timber, she said, which is not a normal sentence to say to your friend unless you're sure. I took her for dumplings so I could stall, and she let me buy too much as the tax for a confession I did not deliver. At the end she put her hand on my wrist and said softer, if you need a ride to not do a thing, I'm your ride. I nodded like a person taking an oath and then scheduled a site visit for the very next Saturday like a person practicing a language she swore she'd forgotten. We held a line for a while, me and Rowan, I mean. We did not become teenage. We didn't play house with other people's furniture. We lay on the deck with our shoulders not touching and talked about the town's new plan to daylight the creek into a park. He asked what it would take to make it safe without making it boring. I said things about sight lines and edges and shade. He said he would bring a bench that slouches just enough to keep poetry from getting defensive. We watched a wallaby that wasn't fussed about us, and we both laughed when it scratched its belly like a man at the end of a good day. It should have been harmless. It wasn't. Desire rarely needs verbs when the nouns are doing all the work. You want a neat turning point, there isn't one. It was the accumulation of tiny agreeing. A text at 10 p.m., storm coming. A photo of rain braided with porch light. A note, bring that sweater. A Saturday morning where I drove up with my breath rehearsing an alibi and drove back with my mouth too tender for conversation. I sat on the edge of our bathtub at home and felt clean and wrong. Eli called from the kitchen, want cinnamon on your toast? And I said yes in a voice that tried not to confess to the cinnamon. I could make us both heroic now. I could tell you Eli was inattentive or that Rowan was patient to the point of sainthood. The truth is less cheering. Eli was good enough that my dissatisfaction felt like a flaw in my own instrument. Rowan was good enough to let me imagine I was a kinder version of myself in a different weather system. I didn't go because of an absence. I went because a part of me wanted to be unobserved, wanted to be a woman whose usefulness wasn't the first thing you noticed. The night the lie tripped over its own shoelaces, I came home late from the cabin and found Eli asleep on the couch with a city map open on his chest. He'd circled little places in red: the dumpling spot I love, the footbridge with the rude seagulls, the bookstore with the tired cat, the tiny bakery that sells circles of cardamom heaven. Post-its with times and coffee here. Sit. Be ignorant with me. He'd planned a day in my language. I stood there with Forrest in my hair and felt like both a thief and a witness. I didn't confess that night. I sat down on the floor and cried into his shoulder and told him I was just exhausted. He believed me because I gave him the kind of tired that fits our life. He held me until I slept in a shape that has always made me safe. In the morning I woke to find he'd put my planner on the table and slipped a note between pages: block out a Saturday and choose me. I stared at the pen and felt my hands shake with how easy it is to complicate a simple request. The creek, meanwhile, kept doing its unsentimental work of being itself. The cabin's deck learned the sound of my apology even when I wasn't saying it. On a windless afternoon, a kookaburra laughed like somebody's uncle. I started hearing the city in the bush and the bush in the city. It's disorienting how fidelity gets loud when you put a road between it and the truth. Sal finally cornered me. She asked me to help her pick a sofa and then drove me to the headland instead, left the engine off and let the gulls narrate the part where I pretended not to know my own story. Say it, she said, not mean. Say the part you think will make me respect you less. I said, I'm going to the mountains to see Rowan. The air did not catch fire. The ocean kept being unserious about our problems. She took my hand and said, okay. Are you leaving Eli? I said no. Are you staying with Rowan? I said no. So what are you doing? I said, I'm letting a creek tell me I'm allowed to be a different person when I'm tired. She nodded. Pick, she said. Soon. Or this will pick for you. She's a paramedic. She knows the sound of a wound deciding. I want to tell you I chose right away. I didn't. I made a schedule of my contradictions. Tuesdays for fidelity. Saturdays for creek. Wednesdays for not looking at my own face too long. I pretended I could be two Sayers if I used two different shampoos. This is the part of the story where you roll your eyes at me, and I deserve it. The day the choice finally did the choosing, a storm closed the highway on my way down from the cabin. A big indifferent tree lay across both lanes like a fact. I parked, hazards blinking, and sat there with everyone else, hot with the knowledge that my alibi had just gotten a flat. I texted Eli blocked storm home late and he wrote back okay. Need rescue with a winky face because we play that game sometimes. My chest hurt. I turned the engine off. Rain slapped the windscreen like a chorus. A tradie in a high-vis knocked on my window and said, "You right?" And I wanted to tell a stranger in a fluorescent vest that I was not. I got home after midnight. Eli was awake, sitting at the table with the map again, a cup of tea gone shy with waiting. "How was the sight?" he asked. I said, "Green." He smiled his tired smile. "I figured," he said. "I kept thinking about you out there, measuring the world." That sentence broke me open. I sat down and said out loud the kind of sentence that tastes like rust. "I haven't been going to sights, Eli. I've been going to a cabin. I've been seeing Rowan." I looked at the table because the table has held more than we have. "I'm sorry," I added, which is a small word for a large thing. Eli didn't shout. He didn't perform injury for my benefit. He looked at the map like he was trying to find a route we hadn't drawn in. "Okay," he said, a word that means nothing and everything. "Do you want to leave?" I said no, so fast I startled myself. "Do you love him?" he asked, and I told the truth that felt both cowardly and brave. "I love how I am there. I love how the world is quieter. He nodded, and his eyes did the kind of what they do when a student tells him their mum finally got the morning shift. Can we make quiet here? He asked. Do you want to try with me? We made rules, not the petty kind. We did two difficult things first. I wrote to Rowan and Eli watched me do it. Not because he wanted to supervise, Eli is not a supervisor, but because I asked him to hold the room while I did the adult version of goodbye. I wrote, I can't keep splitting weather. The creek was a kindness I misused. Thank you for the chair that breathes. Please keep it. He wrote back the next morning, you owe me nothing but the truth you already paid. I cried into the plant on the windowsill and apologized to it because it didn't sign up for this salt. Then we performed the boring miracle of repair. We turned our phones face up on the counter. We picked a night I would stop treating like a staging area and we filled it with nothing fancy, reading on the couch without explaining our books, the cat which is not our cat sneering from the balcony, the quiet bravery of being boring. We took the day Eli had planned on the map and we walked it like pilgrims who laugh at each other's shoes. We sat on the rude seagull bridge and ate cardamom circles and let the pigeons audition for tragedy. Every time I felt the creek pulling at my ankles, I told him. He held my hand with the loose grip he uses when I'm angry at small appliances, the grip that means, you get to have your gravity. I told Sal. She gave me her paramedic who approves of oxygen nod and said she was proud of the part where I said the bad thing out loud. She also said, text him once more in 3 months to say thank you and nothing else, which is an excellent policy for past selves. At work I got less glossy. I stopped being good for free after 7 p.m. I started putting benches on plans like it's a religion and told the mayor's staff I would not attend any more ribbon cuttings where the speeches outnumber the swings. I wore a messy bun to a council meeting and survived. When a developer said, people won't sit under that tree, I said, they will if they're tired, and I meant me. Sometimes I still drive north. I turn off 3 exits early. I sit in a ditchside cafe and drink bad coffee with serious gratitude. I let the thought of the cabin be a window I open and then close myself. I don't make a god of self-denial, I make a person of it. I send a postcard to no one. The creek is fine, I write. It doesn't need me to be special. I buy apple slices from the lady who calls everybody love. I practice going home on purpose. Eli asks better questions now. Is there anywhere in the house that needs to sound like rain, he said once, standing in the kitchen with a saucepan because he is a nerd in the best way. We put a white noise app on an old phone and left it in the corner like a tiny creek. We moved the chair to the shadow near the plant because shadows are where apologists like to exhale. On Tuesdays we sit with our backs touching and read out sentences that made our mouths smile. Sometimes he reads me the dumb jokes his students write on lab reports and I laugh so hard I forget what I was proving. Sometimes I read him lines from a planning document that accidentally became poetry, gentle interface, desire lines, good bones, and we pretend we're archaeologists who found kindness in a blueprint. If you want a moral, I'm the wrong girl. I build roads, I don't bless them. But if you're hungry for a usable sentence, here's mine. Don't call it fate when it's actually logistics. If you are sneaking out because the world is too loud, ask first if the person who loves you can help turn down the city in your chest. Don't mythologize the creek. Don't demonize the kitchen. Don't worship the version of you that only exists 2 hours north of your laundry. Everyone believes I'm innocent because I look like a woman who puts her recycling out on the right day and never steals hearts from national parks. I am not innocent. I am learning. I am less good at pretending this week than I was last week. I measure streets with my feet again, but I also measure days with the kind of affection that doesn't care about witnesses. Sometimes Eli falls asleep on the couch with the map and I tuck a blanket over him and circle tomorrow with a pen. Coffee here, sit. Be ignorant with me, the same 3 phrases, the same 3 prayers, and in the margin I write the only instruction I trust lately, stay long enough to know what quiet you can build. And at night when the city has decided to forgive us for the day, I lie there and listen for the creek that isn't in our apartment and send it love like a practical person, benches, shade, a safe path home. I turn toward the soft noise of Eli breathing and I think aloud sometimes because I like the way the sound behaves in the dark. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and the room agrees.